Going on, everyone? Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Red and Gold Standard Podcast. My name is Zach Hernandez, and as always, I'm joined by my co-host, Matt Llewellyn. We're here a little earlier on this Monday afternoon. We're both free. Figured why not go early. Matt, how you doing today?
I'm doing pretty good, Zach. Yeah, I figure for our East Coasters, I know we have some fans over there. It's 6 p.m. Eastern right now, so figure we get out of the way rather than be 11 p.m. on a Monday night. But I'm doing pretty good. Let's get right into it, man.
Exactly, yeah. If you guys are watching on Twitter, head over to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/49ers Hive. Tune in there. That way you can share and we can actually see and interact with your comments. If you're commenting on Twitter, we're not ignoring you. Don't get mad at us. We just cannot see it. So head over to YouTube, youtube.com/49ers Hive. Make your voice heard. Share your thoughts on the 49ers there. There's a lot that's happened in the last week, I feel like. We can get into it, but kind of the show we have planned, Matt, I want to ask you about Brian Griese. This is kind of an interesting addition the 49ers made, stepping out of the ESPN Monday Night Football booth right into the quarterback's coach position for the 49ers. How does that work out? Trey Lance, Brian Griese, a lot of people are saying there's no similarity there in playing style. Does that matter?
That remains to be seen. I know that Brian Griese is an analyst. He's a former NFL player, and really, Kyle sees something in him that he obviously likes. I can't sit here and say that I can argue against either side of the coin, right? Like there needs to be some trust in Kyle, the coach. At the same time, those people that are coming out and saying, hey, this guy's never been a coach and he just gets thrust in there. How does he fit with Trey Lance? Those are valid concerns too. This is something that I have to take kind of a wait and see approach on. There's some history there in terms of Brian Griese's relationship with the Shanahans. So there could be a little bit of nepotism there. I'm not going to rule anything out. I just think that, it's something that is going to set off the fan base no matter what. I mean, we're still hung up on the should Jimmy stay, should Jimmy go kind of thing. So I'm not surprised the way anybody's taking anything these days. For me, there's potential there. I don't think you necessarily need to be a position coach to become a position coach. I mean, by virtue of having been an NFL player, I believe that gives you a little bit of cachet and it gives you a little bit of knowledge and insight into what it takes to play the position. It depends on what they want, right? Like, what does Trey Lance really need to be coached up on? If it's something like what we think it is, which is passing accuracy and things like that, then Griese stands a really good chance. I don't think that Trey Lance needs Brian Griese to tell him how to run. That's not something that you're really looking for. So in terms of just throwing the football, there could be a fit there. You just got to take time. It worked out for John Lynch, and Fernando brought it up perfectly. Lynch was an NFL player. He came from TV. He's been a GM now, and it looks like it's worked out. So you can never rule anything out.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. And I think a lot of people are saying, like you said, he doesn't necessarily play the same way Lynch is at least expected to play. I don't think that necessarily matters. I think mentality is a lot of it. And I think he might have been brought in to kind of show Lance how to handle things like a pro, like the NFL, like the 49ers expect him to handle things. He had a year of Jimmy Garoppolo. I know Jimmy got a lot of praise, but still Brian Griese's a vet. His father, if I remember correctly, was the quarterback on the, famous Don Shula 72 Dolphins that went undefeated. So there's a lot of kind of history there, and he knows what's expected of a quarterback in the NFL. On the flip side, yeah, Fernando also said Brian Griese talked about how he views QBs like Lamar and Allen. So I think that he's been around the kind of modern style quarterback enough as an analyst to kind of expect what to get with Trey Lance. I did think it was a little interesting, though. You brought up maybe a little bit of nepotism where he does have that familiarity with the Shanahans. And I've seen people on Twitter talking about it, and I'm curious what your point is. Kyle Shanahan, that is, kind of have a blind spot when it comes to hiring coaches to where he favorites people that he's familiar with rather than kind of hiring from outside of his context?
I don't think that's a Kyle Shanahan exclusive, to be honest.
That's fair.
And also, I think it's a little bit simplistic to say he never hires outside because I, as far as I know, there's not really any huge ties between him and Anthony Lynn, and he hired Anthony Lynn. So it's one of those things where, listen, people stick with what they know. It's not what you know, it's who you know. And that is all across the NFL. So I don't think Kyle is doing anything that is outside the realm of normality for the NFL. But you also have to look at, Robert Saleh, head coach. D'Amico Ryan's on the short list to be a head coach. Mike McDaniels, head coach. Matt LaFleur, head coach. Mike LaFleur, goes and follows Robert Saleh to be an offensive coordinator. He could be on the short list. So you're talking about all these guys from the Shanahan coaching tree, right? Whether it's from his dad on down, it's a proven coaching tree. So I don't understand why people think that it's, that he, even if he's picking people inside of his circle, I don't understand why it's a problem.
That's fair. That really is fair. And I do think that a lot of people don't recognize that it is common in the NFL. It's about who I trust, who I think kind of is familiar with what I'm trying to do. And it's just kind of the standard. And it could be a bad thing, could be a good thing. So far, I think it's worked out in Kyle Shanahan's favor.
And that's not NFL only, by the way. That's not NFL only.
No, it's not.
I bet you there's countless listeners of countless shows who will sit here and hammer on about the nepotism and the favoritism and the recycling of people in the NFL who also were handed an opportunity because they knew somebody inside of a certain business. Oh, I got a buddy that works XYZ, so he got me a job. Or my aunt works at this place, she got me a job. It just doesn't matter. It's because it's in the public eye in the NFL that it becomes this problem. It's something that everybody wants to comment on, but it's common across all industries. That's why they tell you to network. It's why LinkedIn is one of the biggest, social, like one of the biggest employee social media apps out there. It's about networking, finding other professionals, getting relationships, building relationships, and then you get jobs. This is how this works, guys. Hate to break it to you.
That's fair. I mean, that is a really good point. Fernando says Brian Griese was with Kyle at Tampa as well. So, yep. All right, moving on. The other coaching additions, I guess updates. There's a ton, and let's see. Brian Peacock kind of went over the list here. Brian Fleury, the new tight ends coach. Chris Forster, offensive line running game coach. Leonard Hankerson, wide receivers coach. Clay Kubiak, assistant quarterbacks coach. Anthony Lynn, assistant head coach and running backs coach. Brian Schneider, special teams coordinator, which was just announced about an hour before we went on. And Bobby Slowick, who is the pass game coordinator. Is there any concern that there's a little too much turnover with these new coaches?
I mean, not really. I mean, Leonard Hankerson, again, NFL pedigree. Forrester's been around. You look at Clay Kubiak, who I'm going to assume is Gary Kubiak's son, which is another connection to the Mike Shanahan coaching tree because Gary Kubiak was the longtime backup for John Elway in Denver. Listen, you got a lot of turnover in coaching, but again, you have to give Kyle some credit for being able to put a staff together. He's been able to do that since he's been here, and it's the sign of a good organization when your assistants are getting poached left and right. Other than the offensive coordinator for the Los Angeles Rams taking the Vikings job, I believe, Kevin O'Connell, who else left? Nobody, So to me, it feels like, most of these hires are just indicative of how good a job Kyle does at putting a staff together and building a staff. And Fernando's right. He's a special team coordinator. Looks like an upgrade. I think it's an upgrade too. I don't think that they wanted to bring back Hightower and they were happy to let him go. Yeah. So, we have to really, again, it's a wait and see. I know nobody wants to hear that. I know that it's like, oh, it's March. The draft hasn't happened yet. The combine just ended. What are we going to do until football? We have nothing to talk about, nothing to do, but you can't, wring your hands over the tiniest little things and just micromanage everything. You just got to go with the flow and, concentrate on more important stuff, right? Like free agency. What's going to happen with the Jimmy Garoppolo market? That's much more important than what Kyle's doing with the staff. At this point, you need to have trust that he knows what he's doing.
Yeah. And also, you touched about it, is that when these coaches do leave, it is impressive that he's able to kind of fill these roles with people who are spoken highly about in the NFL. Matt Barrows was tweeting about Brian Schneider earlier today after it was announced, and he said he spent 12 years as an NFL coordinator, but stepped away from the team past 2 seasons in 20 in Seattle and 21 in Jacksonville for what was cited as personal reasons. Nick Sorensen also added to San Francisco staff, took over for him in Jacksonville. A source who worked with Schneider in the past described him as, quote, highly intelligent and someone who had potential to become a head coach. Obviously, the 49ers believe Schneider is beyond the issues that caused him to step away previously. So people are speaking very highly of Schneider already. So that definitely makes you kind of optimistic towards.
Well, I mean, just look at it. Do you think Kyle being who he is, being who we know he is, Do you think that he's going to hire people who can't do the job or people who aren't intelligent? I mean, to say that a guy's intelligent, it's like, well, yeah, water's
Yeah,
wet, dude. Like,
exactly. Yeah.
Shanahan's not going to hire somebody that doesn't have some level of intelligence and can't demonstrate that they can pick up the concepts that Kyle wants to run. Plain and simple.
Yeah. Good point. Really good point. And yeah, I mean, obviously, if you made it kind of that high up into the NFL, you're doing something right.
Yeah.
Lombardi as well. He tweeted out he had a top 5 unit over an entire decade. And it looks like they've definitely upgraded at the special teams position, which was desperately needed because, like you said, Hightower was just not it. With all due respect to Hightower, just wasn't it. I can hear Middlecoff and Haberman in my ear every time I say Hightower, just screaming his name.
Yeah.
All right. So also the NFL salary cap was announced about an hour ago. And per Mike Garafolo, NFL salary cap set at $208.2 million per team. This is expected increase up from last year. How do you feel about the salary cap, Matt? Is it something the 49ers can definitely work with, especially with a couple of moves they have going on like Jimmy, etc.?
Yeah, they get rid of Jimmy, they get rid of a restructure. You're looking at $40-50 million in cap space, and then you're able to do pretty much whatever you want to do. Bring in people that you want to bring in. I mean, you might not be able to go and get 3 top of the line free agents or anything like that, but you're going to be able to make some moves and to build this team around Trey Lance the way that they need to. So, I know some people are going back to the Brian Griese thing, going to go, oh man, that's a Tom Brady connection or something stupid like that, right? Oh, that's a veteran guy for a veteran quarterback who doesn't need coaching. It's not going to happen. Let the Brady thing die. That's not going to happen. Tampa's already said we're not going to let him go to another team, and he's under contract to them. So, it's one of those things that everybody wants to wish, but Brady's not cheap, and Brady would require draft picks. So I know people are like, trade him for Jimmy straight up. This is not Madden. That's not how that works. So they need to take that money that they have with Jimmy Garoppolo that they're going to get from that deal, whether they trade him or cut him, and they need to put that towards getting some tools for Trey Lance, particularly interior offensive line. And I think a veteran cornerback would be ideal for this team.
Yeah, I did see already people talking about Griese. Doesn't seem like the quarterback's coach for Lance, but more for Aaron Rodgers or Tom Brady. It's like, let's just give it up, guys. It was fun to talk about. It was fun to speculate, but I think at this point, it's clear the 49ers are committed to Trey Lance moving forward, and they should be long term.
Absolutely.
It's definitely the better choice. Hunk Fat says Grant was talking about trading Debo to open up more space. LOL, what a joke.
Dude, Grant's tripping. Grant is suffering from the slow season more than anybody, I think. First, it was get rid of George Kittle. Now it's get rid of Debo Samuel. That's crazy.
I can't imagine, making that point.
He doesn't want to get rid of the albatross contracts that we definitely want to. He wants to get rid of Debo Samuel. I don't understand.
Fernando says Fernando's are in shambles. Have you heard about Amari Cooper and Lawrence refusing to take a pay cut? They are currently almost $15 million over the cap. I'm glad Jerry Jones doesn't own the Niners. Yeah. Looks like they're going to be releasing Amari if they can't find a trade partner. I don't know about Lawrence, but
how about them Cowboys?
Yeah, good luck.
No one's going to trade for Amari Cooper because they know they're going to get rid of him if they don't.
Yep. Lisa says trade Kittle.
I mean, they're not going to do it this year. I think you could start exploring that next year.
Yeah,
but not this season. Speaking
of tight ends, they are rumored to have interest in Austin Cooper of the Browns. If he's available. This is per CBS Sports. This is kind of interesting to me because I think his salary cap was something like $14 million next season. That doesn't really seem like a tight end 2 number. Maybe they're able to make that type of move work if they were able to trade for him. But is that a move that they would make and then look to move Kittle? Do you think, Matt, or would that be a tight end 1, tight end 2 type thing?
They would look to run a 2 tight end set, and I really don't think that they're going to trade for Hooper. I think they're going to wait for the Browns to cut him because they can save $12 million by cutting him, and they just tagged David Njoku. So it looks like Hooper's on his way out. He underperformed the contract that he got, and I think that that's a big part of it. So coming off that down year, if the 49ers want to go get him, they might have to compete with somebody like, the Jets or some tight end hungry team like that, right? Maybe the Jaguars, somebody who wants to put that release valve for their quarterback out there. but he's going to be a lot cheaper than what he's getting paid right now because he doesn't have the performance to back up getting another contract like that. So yeah, you can definitely make a play for him at tight end too. But it's going to be, not a terrible tight end market if you're looking for a second tight end. So the 49ers will have options. And I think they want to kind of do the, give Trey a little bit more underneath help in terms of like what the Ravens do with Lamar Jackson. A lot of his targets are to the tight ends. It gives him a safety valve and it gives him a little extra blocking when he needs it, that kind of thing. It remains to be seen. But at least that rumor is a little bit more viable than the crazy Saquon Barkley rumor that's been going around too.
Yeah.
The 49ers want to trade for Saquon Barkley. That's not happening.
We can get into that a little bit. Fernando's asking, do you think the Niners will draft a tight end? Do you think they will?
I don't know. Give me a second, Zach. I got to take a phone call real quick.
Yeah, you're fine. I'll pull up the Saquon Barkley tweet. So it was tweeted out per PFF Bet that Saquon Barkley is plus 350 odds to join the San Francisco 49ers. I just don't see it. I tweeted out, Kyle would never make this move. And I still firmly believe that. I don't think that it's in Kyle Shanahan or Mike Shanahan's nature to trade a good value pick, I'd imagine, for a running back and then in turn pay him. I know people were telling me, oh, well, he's still on his rookie contract. So then it would just be a short-term rental, and it doesn't really make any sense to me still at that point. I think the 49ers, their kind of MO has kind of been, we can almost roll with anybody at running back position, as evidenced by their 6th-round pick, Elijah Mitchell, turning into a stud, almost rushing 4,000 yards.
Sorry about that.
You're good. Don't worry about it. So I was just telling him how my thought on why Saquon Barkley is kind of a little ridiculous to say that the Niners would likely try to trade for him. I just don't see it happening.
You're just sinking resources into a dude that's already has an extensive injury history. And you're talking about a position for the 49ers that they have talent at and that they don't really, you already have, they're probably going to bring Mostert back on a cheap deal. You already have Elijah Mitchell. You have Trey Sermon, who you still need to kind of sort out. Beyond that, Shanahan's shown a propensity for being able to make a lot out of a little. That's not even to mention Jeff Wilson Jr., who somehow sticks around every year. So that's 4 running backs already in the stable, and you're going to give up more resources for Saquon Barkley, who is on a pretty expensive rookie deal being drafted where he was. Kind of like you said, he's a rental pretty much. And then he has that huge injury history. I just don't see it. I don't see there being a market for him.
Yeah, I don't either. And also, JPA Football on Twitter made a good point. He said the Cowboys are in this position of
because they paid Zeke.
Exactly. Having to cut Amari, possibly cutting DeMarcus Lawrence, restructuring Zach because they paid a running back, which you just can't do. You can't do in today's NFL, especially when lower round picks are producing at the way that they are, and kind of these undrafted free agents, guys kind of get signed depending on the running scheme. They can find success fairly often. So I just don't see it happening. Fernando says Tom Compton and Daniel Brunskill need to go. They get beat a lot. I'm saying I want to improve on the right side of the O-line. I want someone better. I'm tired of Brunskill.
Yeah, right guard's a huge position of need. That's a really big one. I think center's a position of need, regardless of whether or not Alex Mack returns. He's just getting old, and I've seen Alex Mack get beat too. Something has to change so that we don't have plays like we saw in the NFC Championship game where you got guys running into each other, right? It's just, it's not good. It's really not good. No. But yeah, there definitely needs to be some improvement there.
And you know what's sad is that we can get into a little bit of our mailbag questions. Is that the right side is going to need to change, but the left side possibly might need a little change too if they can't afford to keep Laken Tomlinson at left guard. Then do they roll with a guy they drafted last year, or do they try and sign another free agent or draft another guy?
I mean, when you look at their roster, I don't know that I might not tag Tomlinson.
Oh, okay.
To keep him around for another year.
I have not heard anybody suggest that, to be honest with you, but I don't know why they haven't. It's actually a pretty good idea.
I mean, I'd have to look. Let me look real quick to see what the tag is for guards.
I have it right here. Let's see. Offensive lineman 15.3.
Oh, so they classify tackles with guards?
This list for Mike Garafolo only has offensive linemen.
I don't think they do it like that, because then you'd be tagging a right guard that makes left tackle
True.
money.
That's a good point. That's a good point. It's probably incorrect here. So one of our RGS mailbag questions was from my guy MH Kogath on Twitter, and he's basically saying, "Look, Lakin may leave. We're not sure about Mac. Right guard is anyone's guess. Not many people like McGlinchey, but I thought he was getting better at pass protection. He's a monster at running protection. Once McGlinchey's situation is figured out, what they want to do." How are we going to then proceed with this offensive line? You just suggested possibly tagging Laken Tomlinson, which could prevent a bidding war for at least a year for the 49ers.
Forget I said that. Apparently, they actually do it just offensive line, which is a huge oversight.
Wow, I did not know that.
Okay.
That's crazy. That is crazy.
That is crazy. You can't give Laken Tomlinson $16 million a year, dude.
I now see why nobody has suggested, apparently. But yeah, so it seems like the 49ers could enter next year with question marks at the right and left guard positions, which is not ideal when you're putting a essentially first-year starting quarterback in. Do you think any of the guys they drafted last year are candidates to kind of fill these holes, or would you prefer they kind of address it elsewhere?
It's tough to say. They severely overreached for Banks. And this might be another blind spot. I just don't. Even McGlinchey at the 9 spot, you look, and it's kind of an overreach, right? The only guys that they've really been able to plug into that line have been people they've traded for, or people they've signed in free agency. The people that they've drafted have all pretty universally been kind of bad. Yeah. McGlinchey might be the best of that bunch, but still at this point, we're all looking at what he is probably going to hit in the open market. We're all tired of it. Not to mention that he's coming off of an injury-plagued year after coming off of an anorexic year. So I don't know if I trust this regime to draft linemen. That's unfortunate. So it's tough. I don't know that we can count on those guys. You just kind of have to be hopeful and see and hope that they can pull something together. Maybe Banks talks to Juwan Jennings and be like, "Hey man, who'd you talk to about getting your feet in order?" Because he's got slow feet, and that's been his big problem. He can maul, but if he gets on his back foot, he's going to get beat. And I think that's why he didn't play last year. So if they can't figure it out, it's going to be tough. And Trey Lance is going to be running around a lot.
It really is a tough situation. Aaron Banks, Jalen Moore, these are two guys that the 49ers drafted with, I know a lot of fans had high hopes for them, and then we really didn't see much. The little bit we did see wasn't fantastic. And there are big question marks going into next season, especially if they cannot afford to keep Laken Tomlinson, which in my opinion is looking like they're not going to be able to. All the reports coming out that he's going to spark a pretty intense bidding war, and the 49ers are just not equipped financially to participate heavily in that bidding war.
Not while Jimmy's on the team.
Especially not while Jimmy's on the team, which we're going to get to in a second. Fernando says Brunskill got beat in Compton in the Packers game. I watched tape a lot. Boy, do I have news for you. The next week was even worse. Yep. Against the Rams. Fernando says Brunskill's a solid backup. I agree, not a starter. Even Joy Elliott said the same, which is, I think, what he should have been this entire time, but due to necessity was forced to start.
Exactly.
But if I remember correctly, they signed him from like the AFL or whatever those weird lower league football leagues came out a few years back. I want to say 2019, and it looked like a stud when Kyle Shanahan found him when those leagues collapsed. But kind of an extended view of Brunskill shows he is what he is. Everybody knows that. So
it's about getting tape, just like anything else.
Yeah, exactly. Another question from our guy MH Kogath, and we'll get to this comment in a bit. He said, "Who is another tight end that the 49ers should address in free agency?" Because George Kittle, the way he plays, plus one player can't do it all on his own. Is Austin Hooper the kind of guy that you think the 49ers should look to add if he's released? We talked about him earlier, but is there any other tight end you'd have in mind to add?
It looks like there's a few. I mean, pulling it up, you're looking at kind of a lot.
Yeah.
Mike Gesicki's a free agent. Dalton Schultz from the Cowboys is a decent one. Gerald Everett is on the market. Evan Ingram's on the market. There's stuff out there. I don't think what I don't think the 49ers need to do is overextend. Again, I hate the mindset that, we are going to, it's the mindset that the fan base has on the defensive line, right? It's just like, we need all these guys in case this dude gets hurt. Right. I had this argument when I can't remember who it was. I think it was on Twitter when he was like, Bosa's going to have a snap count when he comes back. And I was like, he won't. He's either going to play or he's not going to play. And when you look at the season numbers, Bosa had the highest snap count of any defensive lineman. So it's one of those things you cannot do your free agency around expecting this player to get hurt or this player to get hurt. You build for the best depth that you can, but if a guy like George Kittle gets hurt, you're not going to be able to just replace him. And if you're looking to do that in either trade or free agency, you're going to get real top heavy at one position real quick that isn't really that, you know what I mean? Like tight end, fine, it's good. Kittle's great, but tight end is not the end all be all. And it's not the only position of need, because that's how things like the interior offensive line get neglected, how the secondary gets neglected because we roll 10, 11 deep on the defensive line. And then you have a short back end where there's not a lot of talent, not a lot of depth. And we get into positions where we have to start people like Dante Johnson. Just, you can find a quality number 2 tight end. That's what you're looking for. You don't need, if George Kittle gets hurt, we need somebody who can just match George Kittle's production, because 1, that's not really a thing unless you're getting like Travis Kelce.
Right.
And 2, again, you're sinking too many resources into one spot. So I don't think that's a good way to build a team.
I hear you. 49er minded. I'm not rocking the suit. I don't wear it every episode anymore, but I will have to break it out soon, it seems like. Looking at the free agent tracker here, Zach Ertz, I know, but that's a little on the premium end. There are plenty of guys here that are solid number 2 options. OJ Howard, Hayden Hurst, like you said, or the commenter said, Evan Ingram. And then I saw
you could get a cheap dude. You could get a cheap vet like Kyle Rudolph.
Yeah, exactly. How fat CJ Uzama or Mo Alley Cox? Those would be. I didn't even realize Uzama was a free agent, but he had a solid year for Cincinnati, Alley Cox in Indianapolis as well. I think these are guys in 49er media saying OJ Howard, maybe. Matt, I know you've talked about him previously as well. These are guys that could come in. And like you said, we're not asking, we shouldn't be asking a tight end 2 to replicate George Kittle's production in the case that he gets hurt. But I would like to see just somebody take a little bit off of George Kittle when it comes to the tight end position. I saw Vish earlier today talking about how he would love for the 49ers to use Juice in that role. And I agree. I think that
exactly.
He totally could.
Juszczyk could be a tight end, and I don't, you could roll him out there in 2 tight end sets and get more mileage out of the guy that you're paying so much. And this is what I'm talking about. Now you get another tight end who's expensive. Now you got, what do we do? What do we do with Juice? Because he's criminally underused. He's a pretty good blocker. He's a good pass catcher. He's a good athlete. Like get him out on the edge, play him at tight end. There must be something about it that they don't want to do that for some reason.
Yep. Exactly. It is weird, but every time he's out there, he has success. So I really don't get it. All right. Next question from RGS Mailbag. This is from Gilbert Lozano on Twitter. He said, think it's worth trying to bring in a vet receiver like Amari Cooper. No, we have a core of young, talented receivers. Would it make sense?
Amari Cooper?
Yeah.
No. See, this is the thing. Everybody wants to build a team like Madden. Like, why does everybody want the good guys? No, like, go get a tier 3 wide receiver. Go get another, like, a guy to compete with Juwan Jennings for that last spot. You don't need another top flight guy because then you have too many mouths to feed. They want
That's a good point.
these are the people that are like, oh, go trade for Saquon Barkley, go trade for Hooper, then go get Amari Cooper, and then hey, maybe Odell Beckham, maybe the Rams don't want him after his knee, and it's not realistic. You have to build the team realistically. There's only so many mouths to feed, and you need to concentrate on getting Trey Lance the weapons that he needs without making egos too much of it. You know what I mean? Because everybody thinks that they're the best player. So then it's like, oh, well, how come I only got 3 targets? Oh, how come I only got 6 targets or whatever? That's how that goes.
We've kind of seen that attitude from guys like Amari Cooper specifically. And I just don't think that would be the right situation. Plus, I assume he's going to want a premium. This is likely his last contract in the NFL if he's not going to settle for a 1-year deal. So I just think he's out of the 49ers price range. Like you said, get a kind of wide receiver 3 type guy. Right. Come in hungry, ready to prove it. And
think about it this way. You got George Kittle, who's around 1,000 yards every year. You got Deebo Samuel, who took a giant leap and had 1,400 yards. You had, Brandon Ayuk, who outperformed his rookie season despite being in the doghouse. So imagine he's not in the doghouse next year. That's like 3,000 yards of production just from those 3 guys. Not to mention you have a tight end 2 catch here. You got a use check catch there. You got a pass out to the running back in the flat. And all of a sudden you're looking at, 4,000 yards passing. There's not that much more to go around, especially for a guy like Amari Cooper for the price that Amari Cooper wants. You can't just get rid of Jimmy's contract and then replace that entire thing with Amari Cooper. I just don't, that doesn't make sense to me at all.
I agree with you. Lisa's saying, go get Dante Jackson and draft a cornerback, then draft a safety and let Tart go.
I kind of think they drafted Hufanga to replace Tart, to be honest.
I agree. I think the writing was on the wall last season.
Yeah.
They've had him in there sporadically, even when Tart was perfectly fine.
Yeah. The rumor is the 49ers want to go after Charvarius Ward.
Yeah.
So we'll see how that goes. But I could see like a mid-level guy like that, to bring in and then draft around that. That's not too bad a thing.
Yeah. All right. That is it for this installment of the RGS mailbag. This is something we didn't do for a long time. So if you guys like it, tweet us your questions throughout the week. We're more than happy to answer them. I know we kind of take them live on air, but it's still fun to kind of have it a little more structured and get them in beforehand.
For sure.
All right.
We gotta go back and talk about the Don Yee, Jimmy Garoppolo.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm going to pull up the tweets that kind of started all of this. And obviously John Lynch on Good Morning Football with Peter Schrager brought it up. But this is where I first saw it from 49ers Sports Talk on Twitter. And his tweet said, source, 49ers organization is, quote, beyond angry and feels, quote, one-upped by Garoppolo and agent Don Yee. Niners recommended Jimmy get surgery right after the playoff loss, believing he'd be cleared before the new league year. He informed the 49ers they were opting not to have surgery, then about faced. San Francisco still intends to trade Garoppolo, and there is interest, but the potential return trade compensation took a significant blow with their decision to get surgery now. So this was interesting to kind of start. This came out, I believe, yesterday morning. And I thought, wow, this was kind of interesting timing. And I asked you when the report came out that he still needed surgery, why wait? And you basically said there's a multitude of reasons why he could have decided to wait and then now decided he needs surgery. But do you think Don Yee and the 49ers are kind of shoving it right in the 49ers organization face?
Oh, Don Yee is working him. That's for sure. Listen, this is not the first time. This goes back to 2020 where Jimmy Garoppolo has had an injury and the team has said one thing and Jimmy and his people have said another thing. Let's not forget when he had the ankle? And he was like, man, this is like the worst thing ever. My leg almost fell off. Or it was a calf. It was a calf. He thought it was his Achilles. And he's like, man, I might be out forever. And then Kyle's like, oh, it's a calf strain.
He'll be back a couple
week to week. Yeah. And Jimmy's like, man, this could end my season. And it's gone back and forth like that, There's something that's not going right here. And, if it's true that Don Yee's game in the system and the 49ers recommended that he get the surgery immediately, first of all, for that particular surgery, he wouldn't have been ready by the league year. It would have been close, but he would have been back by, mini camps and stuff like that for sure. He would have been ready to go by like May. This puts his timetable more like July. Um, this looks like Jimmy Garoppolo and Donnie are turning the screws a little bit to the 49ers. And I don't think that this behooves them, to be honest, because if the 49ers get backed into a corner where they think the compensation just is garbage or they're not going to get anything for him, they're going to cut him. And Jimmy Garoppolo is not going to get another $27 million contract. He's just not. He's going to have to go, and they're going to bid on him, and he might get 19, 20, but he's not getting what he was making. And so this is a very, very dangerous game that they're playing. And I think it's kind of, if this is true, it's kind of it's a little bit of sour grapes, you know. This is a team that went out and drafted Trey Lance, and you're not happy about that, right? But what was the reason they said they drafted Trey Lance? Because you couldn't stay healthy, and now you're not healthy, and you're taking you're taking more time out to rehab another injury. And because of all these injuries, you never got better. So now you're tapped. You're going to be 30 years old, and you've had a multitude of injuries. I think this is Jimmy's second surgery on his throwing shoulder. So this presents a problem going forward. And if it does kill the market, then that's going to hurt Jimmy just as much as it hurts the 49ers. The one thing that I will say is the fan base is going to be pissed if they cut him because they're not going to get anything for him, but they already won the trade. You traded a second round pick and you made it to a Super Bowl and you made it to an NFC championship game. Like, I don't know what else you need to do to win a trade. They won that trade with the Patriots. But they're going to be pissed regardless. My thing is take whatever you can get for him. If it's a 6th round pick, whatever, get all the offers that you need, whatever the highest one is, do it. If it turns out to be something like a conditional pick, right, where it's like a 4th, but if he plays, in most of the games, it moves up to a 2nd. It's similar to, like, I think it was the Alex Smith deal was kind of like that. If they made the playoffs, it went up. That's all you got to do. But you really just, I don't know, man. Yeah. I don't know.
It's a tough situation.
They're playing this like, I think they're trying to double dip is what they're doing, because there's a $7 million injury guarantee that he has, right? Mm-hmm. So if they cut him, he gets the $7 million. And then if he can get like a $22 million deal, he actually comes out $2 million ahead. But like, that's just, I don't know, man. It's a weird thing. And Joey says, if y'all remember, Marty Bennett said Jimmy's agent did this stuff back with the Pats. Yeah, he also said Jimmy was a bitch too. So it seems, and Hung Fat said it too, he seems to be such a little bitch behind the scenes. I wouldn't be surprised. This is the kind of stuff that leaks out that you're just like, dang, man, he's playing the game. So it's a weird situation overall, though. It's gonna the 49ers need to get it done sooner rather than later.
I agree with you. I really do. It's such a weird situation. It does seem like Donnie and Jimmy are kind of angling for the team to release him. And over the last week, so much came out in the media that was kind of these reports that are like, oh, Jimmy, now he's going to need surgery and all this stuff's coming out. And you can't tell me that didn't hurt his trade value, because the 49ers were saying all along, right after that loss to Rams, he'll be ready by the league year. He's going to have surgery immediately. And then after that, he'll be ready to go. Now, I think if I remember correctly, it's like a 16-week window to where he will be back to throwing. So a team is now going to trade for him and not even see him throw until July, which is it's just wild. It really is just crazy. So
the only thing that I'll say about that is that, do you need to see him? You don't really need to see him throw. No. He's got tape, right? It's one of those. This is a capsule injury. It's not a rotator cuff, so this is not going to be a long-term thing that's just going to, really affect how he plays. It's just going to be more about, what you need. I think the Commanders are still maybe in the market. I think that they were looking. The report was they called around to every team to talk about their quarterback situation. But the more we go along, the more it looks like Rodgers and Wilson aren't going anywhere. Maybe the Colts are involved because Frank Reich might look at Jimmy Garoppolo and say, hey, we got a dome, so we don't need him to have a super powerful arm, but we can't have him making the type of mistakes that Carson Wentz was making. I don't know, man. I don't know. It's a weird one. It'll be interesting. Monday is the beginning of the legal tampering period with the start of the new league year with free agents. And I think that some of that will inform what the options are. Again, I said it as a backup, and people were kind of mad at me for saying it, but people in league circles are talking about Mitch Trubisky getting another starting job. So you got to wait for the dominoes to fall. We got Marcus Mariota and Mitch Trubisky and a couple other people. What are the Colts going to do with Carson Wentz? Are they going to cut him or whatever? There are dominoes that need to fall, but the sooner the 49ers can get him off of the team, the better for the fan base, for the team, for everything else. They just need to get him out the door. They definitely need to do it before free agency, just because they need that money to bring guys in. It's plain and simple.
Yep, exactly. Dion Night Game Podcast is saying all that bullshit professionalism that he so-called exhibited during the season is now bullshit. All I hear is Jocko Willink in my head saying, play the game, because it does really seem like that's what Jimmy and his agent are doing here. They view this as a game. They're trying to scheme it and play it to their advantage. I can't hate on it. It is what it is, but it does put the 49ers in a pretty shitty position here trying to.
Well, and a lot of players will capitulate to the advice of their agents.
Exactly. And the team now is like, look, dude, we played you all year. You got to give us something in return. And Jimmy's like, you only played me all year because you were trying to get a higher pick in return for me. So I do see both sides of the coin here, but
I mean, at the same time, they could have just jettisoned his ass last year.
Exactly. So really
and the 49ers said nothing but good things, particularly John Lynch said nothing but good things about Jimmy Garoppolo. And nobody could bring up Trey Lance without Jimmy Garoppolo's name also being brought up in whatever interview. So the team public facing treated him with as much respect as possible. They talked about being super transparent why they were drafting a quarterback, which totally made sense with your inability to stay healthy. That's something that's just that the team wanted to do from the beginning. It seems like they did it. But now you're looking at it and you see some of those things, right? They were pumping up Jimmy, trying to build his trade value. And it seemed like the day of or the day after that Jimmy announced that he needed the surgery, that's when dudes started pumping up Trey Lance, right? And then after that, John Lynch came and did like an end around and was like, oh, maybe if things work out, Jimmy could still be here, trying to maybe pump a little bit back into the trade market by saying, hey, if we don't get the right offer, maybe we'll just keep him. So I think there is something to the fact that the team is probably super pissed about this, and I can't imagine why they wouldn't be.
Yeah. John Lynch, like I said, he was at the Good Morning Football. He was at the Combine, and he was on Good Morning Football with Peter Schrager. You could tell. I don't know if you saw the clip of him, but he looked pretty damn annoyed. And he was like, I didn't know. It seems like Jimmy didn't know. I have a hard time believing that Jimmy didn't know, but it is what it is, I guess.
I mean, there is a time where if the doctor recommends that you rehab that injury, that's something that you definitely can do. But the fact that it seems like that wasn't communicated with the team, that's what he was trying to do. We heard about the thumb needing the surgery, right? And now all of a sudden the thumb doesn't need surgery, but the shoulder does. There's some disconnect here, and there's been disconnect on Jimmy Garoppolo and his injuries with this team for the better part of 2 seasons now. So I don't know what's going on, but again, the best thing for this team is to just get rid of Jimmy Garoppolo.
Yeah, 100%.
Luan 067811 says we can buy followers if we go to this website.
Well, Seems legit. Let's do it.
Seems legit.
Yeah, Ian Sharp says too.
Get
weird how the information.
Banned. Get that ass banned.
We can't ban on Twitch.
Dang it.
But weird how the information about Jimmy's injuries was never the same with management and Jimmy himself. Exactly. Throughout the entire course of him in San Francisco, they were never on the same page. And it was kind of a joke at this point to where it was like, oh, Jimmy says it's a few weeks. Kyle Shanahan says it's longer, or vice versa. Who knows if that's just because Jimmy looking out for himself, Don Yee looking out for himself. It kind of seems like that at this point.
Yeah.
Fernando says Jimmy's probably doing this to us to release him because he's hurt, that the Niners traded for Trey Lance. I don't think it's that personal. I just think that he feels that he could have more of a say as to where he goes as a free
Right.
agent
As
instead
a
of
free
having
agent,
to
definitely.
trade.
And the $7 million injury guarantee takes a little bit of the sting off of his next contract because he's not going to get the same thing he's going to get paid here or currently.
Exactly. Fernando Jimmy ain't a leader. I've said it. It does make sense what he did. How could you not know? It doesn't make sense. Excuse me. How could you not know?
I think that he's a leader because he's well liked, not because he takes accountability and not because he leads by example.
Well said. Really well said. 49er Media says, I hate how with any player they try to not get him surgery, and then we hear later on they actually do need surgery.
I mean, that's just medicine, dude.
Yeah.
Sometimes, again, it's, and I can tell you just because of the way we do things in the medical industry, it's just we're always going to try the conservative treatment first, because any type of surgery or anything like that, I mean, we talk about it as if it's just a normal part of life, right? Oh, he tore his ACL, he could get surgery or whatever. Any of you out there who have actually injured anything, like I've had 2 shoulder surgeries. My shoulder is like torched. It's all like my shoulder's worthless pretty much nowadays. It's to get you to a baseline. Surgery doesn't magically fix everything and you feel 200% better. It's just to fix the anatomy of the injury. If they can do that without cutting into you and potentially damaging other body structures, that's what they're going to do. That's just a part of life. They're always going to do conservative treatment unless there's clear and emergent concern for the function of something. So torn ACL definitely needs surgery because you can't function without it.
Yeah. It's a good point. It's not necessarily that somebody was lying or being kind of malicious with the information. It does happen that it just kind of progressed to the point where now it's needed. Fernando says, Don, you just wanted money. I mean, every agent does want money at the end of the day. So
yeah.
In general, it seems like our players wait until months after they sustained an injury in order to have the surgery. You just kind of address
there's also, again, beyond rehab, even an obvious injury, like, for example, Nick Bosa, he waited like a month and a half to have ACL surgery. That's because you want all of that inflammation to be gone before you do anything, because you're going to go in there and cut and then kick back up that inflammation. So you want it to be at a pretty baseline level before you do anything. Otherwise, you're going to just compound an issue with an issue.
Yeah. All right. So Dion's saying, I partially blame Kyle and John due to them putting him out there week after week, knowing he was hurt to an extent. Matt, my question for you, and then we can start to wrap things up here.
Yeah.
Looking back on the year now, about a month and a half or so out from the last game of the season, did the 49ers make the right choice in rolling with Jimmy Garoppolo this year?
I mean, they made the NFC Championship game.
Yeah.
And from a results-based review of it, you can't really argue. They were one of the final 4 teams in the NFL this season. From a macro view beyond this last season, the 2021 season, I think they probably should have rolled with Trey Lance, particularly, it's tough to say, right? Because, Jimmy tells you he's good to play. He's good to play. He's good to play. And you can date him. Dude, where's Lisa been? Lisa's killing it today.
Right? I know.
Great
These comments are hilarious.
Welcome. But yeah, he says he can go out there. So you put the guy out there, right? Some of that's on how they felt about Trey Lance and wanting to protect Trey Lance. And that's part of that macro view too, right? You don't want to get him out there and have him be anything less than, what you think he can be. It's tough. We could all sit here and armchair quarterback this whole thing the entire time, but and see, it's too easy to say he could have done the same thing, if not better, with Lance. We don't know, right? Like, we have very little. I mean, people point to the Texans game because, he played a good game. Man, he played a good half. That first half was one of the worst halves I've ever seen. Like, that first half was awful. So you just don't know. And so I think they were close. I think that if they would have lost when they were 3-5, if they would have lost that next game, or if they would have lost again, after the Tennessee game, I think they would have played him. But it's hard to argue with the results. Again, NFC Championship. Most teams would take that. Ask the Cleveland Browns. They'd take that.
Yeah, I agree with you there, especially because at the beginning of the year, when we were all kind of giving our preseason predictions and whatnot, I think most of us here at 49ers side basically said a wild card would be
Yeah.
the
I said
highest
10
of our
and 7 with a wild
expectations.
card. And that's
Yeah.
like they were 10 and 7. They made the wild card, but then they won 2 playoff games. So,
Yeah.
I mean,
So they basically
maybe with
exceeded
Trey Lance,
our
they do the same
expectations.
record, right? But maybe they don't win those playoff games.
Yeah.
You
And
know?
it is hard to say. It really is hard to say because, like you said, just because of what we did see from Trey Lance, that doesn't necessarily mean that we could extend that out to an additional 15 games at that same level. Could he have been worlds better? Yes, but he could have also been worlds, below the level that Jimmy played at.
Right.
Just look at Justin Fields this year.
Right.
It was
And
pretty
listen, and we
atrocious.
need to temper expectations. Yeah, like you said, Justin Fields, and every rookie quarterback outside of Mac Jones, who was labeled as the most pro ready and who still had 3 interception games and games where, I mean, they won a game where he threw 3 passes. Like that's just, it is what it is. You can't, again, it's hard to put that much expectation on a rookie. And even when he plays next year, I hope people temper their expectations because he's going to have a lot of turnovers next year. He's going to make a lot of wild plays, but the nature of young quarterbacks is you have to live through their mistakes. That's just how it is. He has to learn on the job. So it's hard to say that, playing Lance would have been definitively better or worse or whatever. We just don't know. And trying to do that hindsight stuff, it's a worthless thought exercise.
Yeah, I agree. I really do agree. I just think it's interesting to see because a lot of fans were already saying that they made the wrong choice. Oh, Jimmy's now not even going to repay them with, trading now that he needs surgery. They can't even cash in on rolling with them. I don't think that's necessarily the choice.
They already cashed in with the Super Bowl and the NFC Championship berth.
Yeah. So I think they
got
got
all the eyes on the team, all
worth.
of the sponsorship opportunities that come with that, all of the people that look at Kyle and go, dang, I want to go play with the 49ers. I mean, we saw it at the combine. Everybody was being asked about, and everybody who was asked about the 49ers would be like, I'd love to play for that organization. And why is that? Do you think that under the Jim Tom Sula days that people wanted to come play for the 49ers, or under the Mike Nolan days that everybody was just clamoring to come play for the 49ers? No, it's because Kyle and this team have been in the spotlight. They've had success. They have some cachet. And part of the reason they've had that is Jimmy Garoppolo. So the 49ers won that trade already. You don't need to win it twice. Just move on from him however you can, get what you can, and move on and try to get some free agents for this team to build around Trey Lance.
Yeah, and also just to remind everybody real quick before we wrap up, how bad things were at the quarterback position before Jimmy Garoppolo arrived.
Yeah.
The kind of coming out of the Colin Kaepernick era into the Blaine Gabbert.
Oh man, Jimmy
Brian
Stands
Hoyer.
love to honk on those quarterback wins, but I'm just like, dude, Brian Hoyer and CJ Beathard were so bad. So bad. Blaine Gabbert, so bad.
Nick Mullins.
Right? Nick Mullins, so bad. It's just,
it's not a high, ceiling to compare them to. So.
Right. When you're talking, like, of course, Jimmy looks good compared to those guys.
Yeah. And saying that he's a starting quarterback in the NFL doesn't mean that you can't also upgrade. And that's exactly what the 49ers are looking to do, because if they want any shot at being successful, and successful meaning a Super Bowl, a realistic Super Bowl run,
right,
they need something better than Jimmy Garoppolo, because he just makes horrible mistakes. And we're not getting into this again. It was just an interesting thought experiment. Any final thoughts, Matt, before you want to wrap up on this show?
It's going to be interesting. This is the last week of the dead period. Before we get into the legal tampering, before we get into the free agency, and it'll be interesting to see what we hear this week, because I think this is going to be a big week on the Jimmy Garoppolo front. What they do with him. It's also going to be a big front, I think, on any restructures that they're going to do for any contracts that they need to try to, make some more room. And I wouldn't be surprised if the 49ers tagged somebody. Hard to say who it would be, but particularly now that, we know that offensive line is just one position, which is so wild to me. It's probably why so many good interior linemen hit the market.
It's a good point. It is insane. I did not know that until today.
Yeah.
Joey on the screen saying, use promo code HIVE, Calvin Ridley. That story's
Oh
crazy.
boy.
Story's crazy. Calvin Ridley suspended a year for
Yeah.
betting. Eek. Well,
Calvin Ridley
so
bet
much for
$1,500 to lose 11.5. That's not good math.
he must have saw one of our my bookie plugs and took advantage of the promo code.
Right.
All right, guys. I think that's going to do it for this episode of the Red and Gold Standard podcast. Thank you, everybody, very much for tuning in. This earlier show, Monday afternoon. Hit like, hit subscribe. We're trying to get to 2,000 subscribers so we can give away a 49ers jersey. Help us get there. We will bring you the content. It will not be a one-sided deal, I promise.
Absolutely. Thank you guys for joining us. We bring you here. We're going to get things really high gear when free agency comes around, bringing you all the stories, all the news for the week. Niners News will be making a return during free agency week. So with that being said, thank you as always for joining us. Follow me and Zach on all our socials. And until next time, go Niners.